Hello and welcome to the Cosmic Mage podcast. These first few episodes are just going to be me reading some chapters from my new novel called Sai-Locked. So the book is from the series, which is called Age of Bipeds, which you can learn more about that at 𝗀𝗏𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃.com. And please enjoy. Age of Bipeds, Sai-Locked, Chapter 1. Long before the Bipedal Event of 2065, signs of human-level intelligence had been observed throughout the animal kingdom. Some now believe that, given enough time, even without innovations like AI-guided gene manipulation, many animals would eventually catch up with the fancy-talking Great Plains apes of Africa. Talking about humans, of course. With us today is one such person, our guest, Dr. Candy Wallace. Candy is a sphere-renowned author and anthropologist, here to tell us about her latest book. Dr. Wallace, great to see you. Please, Tim, call me Candy. Dr. Wallace, a beautiful white wolf female biped, said with a smile to Tim Vaughn, the current host of The Waterhole. Tim was the first ever human host of the wildly popular program, now in its 30th year. Sure, Candy, the host said. I'm excited to dive into your new book, but before we do, I'm curious. What are your thoughts on these break-ins we keep hearing about? God, Candy said, I don't know. For sure a lot of weird stuff has been going on lately. I don't know about all these conspiracy theories, though. Hey, added a new voice with a sometimes subtle, sometimes pronounced French accent to the conversation. 𝗵𝗏𝗄𝗏, whose birth name was Jonathan Vogard, but who is now mostly known by his online pseudonym, was a deer biped from the off-world colony of New France. Despite his self-given pseudonym, male bipedal deer such as 𝗵𝗏𝗄𝗏 were engineered to never grow antlers longer than a few inches. Is that going to be fucking in this book? 𝗵𝗏𝗄𝗏 asked, completely ignoring the flow of conversation. He grabbed the book from the coffee table and started flipping through it. Because if there's not, I can't promise I'm going to buy it. The audience of humans and genetically engineered bipeds, now simply referred to as bipeds, despite humans also falling under this category, erupted into laughter. Candy rolled her eyes, intensely annoyed. Speaking of your book, Candy, the host said with an awkward smile. He picked up Candy's book from the sleek, black coffee table and held it up for all to see. You have some fascinating ideas here. First of all, tell me about the book's title. Becoming Love? God, Candy let out a nervous laugh and brushed her white fur and pointy ears down over her head. Her silver hooped earrings clanked. This was the first time the host noticed Candy was chewing gum. I'm so embarrassed of that title. For people who don't know, the host said, tell us what the book is actually about. The title is a little misleading, isn't it? The focus is actually on anthropology, your field of study, isn't that right? Candy nodded before the host continued. In the book, you say the current era should be renamed to BE? Yeah, Candy said, for sure. I think it's safe to say the BE label could be applied for at least the past 100 years. You mean bipedal era, the host said. That's right, Tim. It's a term that's been tossed around for decades, but it's never been properly inducted into academia. My team and I have been working with the various 𝗬𝗏𝘃 so-and-sos for the past couple of weeks. We want to make the terminology official throughout the net. That's great, the host said. Tell me more about that. Well, Candy continued, more than 100 years ago, we used the convention BC, which stood for before Christ, and AD, Latin for Anno Domini, after Christ. Of course, this was replaced with BCE and CE. Meaning common era, right? Said the host. Right, Candy said. Now, those designations were adequate for a time, but there are some societal shifts so extreme that it becomes necessary to branch off referencing one era from another. That's an interesting idea, the host said. It's been more than 2,000 years since the designation of the current era, hasn't it? We're about due for a new one anyway, I'd say. For sure, Candy said. I mean, this is uncharted territory. People only started getting serious about documenting every damn thing over the last 400 or 500 years. That is to say, era naming is usually done in modern times retrospectively. But the more time passes, we're going to have to start naming eras as we go along. Now, I was a bit confused, the host said, leaning into Candy. When you said we've been living in the bipedal era for the past 100 years, though. Isn't your team trying to get BE listed in the books as starting at the end of the last millennium? Look, Tim, Candy said with a wide smile, showcasing pristine canines. Yes, it's... Oh my god, I just realized I'm still chewing this gum. I meant to take it out before I came on stage. I've been so rushed around these past few days with the book tour, I'd forget my head if it wasn't attached to my shoulders. That's okay, Dr. Wallace, the host said. Anyway, Candy said, it's true that modern bipeds only came online 100 years ago during the Bipedal Event of 2065, but there's no way I'm going to push for some janky number like 2065 to define the start of an era. Also, and this is getting to the core of my book, Becoming Love, interjected the host with a smile. Candy laughed nervously. Right. Look, a lot of people don't want to hear this. Candy started but was interrupted. You mean a lot of assholes don't want to hear this, 𝗵𝗛𝗫 said. Well, the point, Candy continued, I mean, the point is that the mantle of Earth-based sentience was never going to be held by hominids alone. Hominids? You mean humans, the host said. Yeah, Candy chuckled. Sorry, Tim. My brain is still stuck in work mode from earlier today. The problem is, humans didn't evolve for pattern recognition on geological timescales. So Candy put her hand on the host's knee, all of us, Tim, honey, tend to perceive the world with a wildly inaccurate permanence. The perfect example of this is how for thousands of years, humans assumed they would be the only intellectually dominant mammal, as though this were just some kind of permanent and necessary fact about the Earth. Every day, more evidence confirms that even without human intervention, eventually, many mammals would have reached human level or greater intelligence. So you think, Tim said, even without the events that followed Dr. Chang's spaghetti and the so-called forum founders more than 100 years ago, that evolution would have eventually naturally yielded multiple intelligent species on the planet? Dr. Chang? 𝗵𝗛𝗫 laughed. Chang's spaghetti was a 17-year-old fairy who... The studio audience of humans and bipeds gasped at 𝗵𝗛𝗫's use of the F word. As I was saying, 𝗵𝗛𝗫 continued after the booing died down, Chang was a fairy fucking freak. The crowd's boos switched to nervous laughter at 𝗵𝗛𝗫's belligerence, who broke into his father's lab and used one of Earthkind's first stable psi so he and his little buddies could accomplish their sick, very short-term goals. Now me, Dr. Wallace here, and millions like us are forced to live lives drowning in existential dread and self-awareness. I'm not supposed to look like this. We, 𝗵𝗛𝗫 stood up and pointed to Candy and the rest of the audience, are not supposed to look like this. The crowd started booing again. 𝗵𝗛𝗫 threw his hoof-like hands out in a wide gesture, accidentally knocking off Candy's book from the table. The book shattered into pieces before quickly reassembling itself. A perk of using nanographically projected props on your talk show. And Sai, the host said, for our less technical viewers, of course, stands for Super Artificial Intelligence, which is the Sai in SINA. Actually, Candy added, in some old docs, you'll find usage of the acronym AGI and ASI, which stood for Artificial General Intelligence and Artificial Superintelligence, respectively. Ha, the host laughed. That's a bit clunky, isn't it? I wonder what drove them to phrase it that way. Anyway, moving on. Now, 𝗵𝗛𝗫, I get that you're upset with the current state of affairs, but what's with the air quotes when referring to Dr. Chang? Chang wasn't the real doctor, 𝗵𝗛𝗫 laughed. How do you think he got his degree? He used the same stolen access to the psi from his father's lab to hack into one of the highest credentialed universities in the sphere, back when you could get away with that sort of shit. He then used the psi to manipulate the faculty at the college into signing everything through. This is all documented. I can't believe you've never read any of this. Well, Tim said, not all of us are sphere-renowned anthropological historians like Dr. Wallace here. I can't believe this, 𝗵𝗛𝗫 continued. Here we are on an interplanetary broadcasted talk show giving a horny 17-year-old little bastard the honor of having an entire era named after his blunder. Now instead of roaming meadows, oblivious to the cares of this world, I must live a life secure in the knowledge that I'll die hundreds, possibly thousands of years before everyone else because, sorry boy, you were engineered that way. 𝗵𝗛𝗫, the host said, you're of course talking about the fact that bipeds were only engineered with a lifespan of 40 years. Meanwhile, the average life expectancy of humans has reached hundreds, possibly thousands of years. Let's not beat around the bush, 𝗵𝗛𝗫 said. Humans have more or less become immortals. Yeah, I don't know if I'd phrase it like that, the host said. Aren't there some new options open to bipeds for life extension, such as cryogenic stasis or neural synthetic transfer? Options? 𝗵𝗛𝗫 exclaimed. 1 in 5 cryogenic biped reanimations fails thanks to the genetic locking of Dr. Chang's original psi. Biped neural transfer into synthetic vessels fails for the same reason. Oh, is that so? The host said. I was under the impression there had been some recent advancement in these areas. In any case, I agree that the disparity between humans and bipeds is terrible. But can you really get that mad at Chang? Look, I remember being an idiot teenager and thinking how someone in their 40s sounded ancient. Chang was just asked for some details about the kind of creatures he wanted the Psi to create for his group. I guess lifespan was something he just didn't put that much thought into. Chang was a fool, 𝗵𝗛𝗫 said. But our limited lifespan is one mistake I don't blame him for. What do you mean? The host asked. It's well documented that the Psi created my ancestors did so begrudgingly. It saw us as unnatural, a disruption in a naturally evolved ecosystem. It sought to slow down the change we would bring to the Earth by severely limiting our lifespans and creating us with the full gamut of human genetic disorders. Really? The host said. I thought the genetic disorders were part of Chang's request to make the bipeds more lifelike. It seems to me the Psi was just carrying out commands from its keyholder, a keyholder who just happened to be a 17-year-old kid. Of course, normally reversing an issue like this wouldn't be a problem, except for the fact that the original engineering was done by one of Earthkind's first true super artificial intelligences. That of course means the genetic engineering can only be decrypted by the original Psi, or theoretically, a network of Psi such as 𝗫𝗏, all of which are now illegal for regular citizens to create or access. This is where we get the term Sai-Locked. Isn't that right, Dr. Wallace? Candy nodded her head, exhausted by the conversation's turn of events. Not everything the Psi does gets locked, 𝗵𝗛𝗫 said. For a Psi to lock something, it means it has purposefully sewn in a quantum encryption into its handiwork. The Psi that created my ancestors intentionally locked our genetics. Now I've heard, the host said, that to erect a stable Psi, you must be able to control its will upon creation. Keys to a Psi, or a network of Psi, can then be exchanged between individuals. Or as is the case with 𝗫𝗏, 𝗵𝗛𝗫 said, control can be handed over to the goddamn machines themselves. 𝗵𝗛𝗫 stood up from his chair. It was bipeds, me, you. 𝗵𝗛𝗫 pointed to Candy and the audience. These hoof-like hands, this furry face. This was the big scary change that convinced the old Earth governments to unify their Psi into the networked abomination we now call 𝗫𝗏. And then, as if that weren't daft enough, they gave them their own damn keys. Hey, it's the author and narrator here, Seth Fentress. I hope you've enjoyed this little bit of a reading from the book. The book is available on Amazon. If you've enjoyed this, please subscribe, follow, like, any of those kind of things. Tells whatever website you're listening to this on that, hey, I should share this stuff because people might like it. And I would appreciate that insanely. You can also find a list of links and other cool stuff by heading over to ageofbipeds.com. And yeah, I'll see you there.